privacy manual. And if you look on the back of your agenda, you can see the objectives for our two speakers tonight. If you want to follow along. Also, guests, there's evaluation forms on all the seats, and please feel free to fill them out. They're really helpful to the speakers, even though you feel like you may not know what to say. Everything's helpful. Nobody's an expert here, so please just go ahead and if you feel up to it, fill those out. It would be great. This is a speech our speaker will give in front of her department about a recent pro bono project she worked on. It came about in an unusual way, as she'll explain. Please welcome Cassandra with pro bono work includes trying to improve the law.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. We often think of pro bono work as helping the poor, but under Washington rules, pro bono work also includes efforts to improve the law. And I had the opportunity recently to have a project in which I believe I got an opportunity to potentially improve the law. But before I explain what the project was, I wanted to give you a little background information because it came about in an unusual way. In December of last year, I was looking at the news online and I saw some headlines about these researchers who proposed that fashion models should be regulated by OSHA because requiring them to be excessively thin is an occupational hazard. And the reason this intrigued me is because I wrote a paper several years ago and I made that very argument. My paper was in the Journal of Contemporary Health Law and Policy and theirs was in the Journal of Public Health. So I really wanted to see what they wrote, but I didn't want to pay the $50 to download the article online. So I thought, well, I'm just going to write to one of the researchers and see if they'll give me a courtesy copy. And that's what I did. So this woman, Bryn, I reached out to her. I gave her a copy of my journal article and expressed my interest and thought she might be able to give me a courtesy copy, and she sent it to me. And then we had a couple of email exchanges about this idea and how frustrated we were with the industry. So now I want to give you a little bit to think about because I know it's hard to get sympathy for fashion models. They're young, they're thin, they're beautiful, it's very glamorous. It's really hard to feel sorry for them, except at the time that I wrote my article, this was in 2009, there were 3 models who had died from starvation-related complications. Up to 40% of fashion models have eating disorders. Oftentimes, they are not paid if they gain weight, and they get away with it because they're independent contractors and not employees. There's also plenty of literature showing that our adolescents, they look to these images, and they think that's the body that's ideal, and they strive for that. So these are all problems that need to be addressed. A couple of weeks after this email exchange, I heard from Bryn again, and she and her colleague Catherine, those 2 co-authors, they wrote to me because an assembly member, Mark Levine from California, he read about their paper and their idea, and he thought, hey, I want this to be in California. Would you 2 help me draft legislation? And they reached out to me because they knew that I had this interest. I wrote about this topic and I cared about it, and they asked me if I would help them do this, and I said sure. So we had a very short time frame because that's the nature of legislation. You have to get things done really quickly. And for whatever reason, the other co-author, whose name is Catherine, she's actually a lawyer. Bryn's more of a scientist professor. And for whatever reason, Catherine wasn't available. So it was basically me and Bryn working under this time frame. And we put together an outline of what we thought would be good. And then I pulled from New York and California laws, examples in the regulations in the law where we might be able to do something here in California. We then sent our draft to the legislative assistant, Naomi. She then arranged a telephone conference with the legislative council. We talked about what we wanted, and then he took it from there. And he drafted a bill. It's AB 2539, and it was introduced on February 19th. And it will be introduced into the Labor and Health Committees on April 6th. So what the bill asks for is a number of things, and one is we want fashion models to be recognized as employees because certain benefits accrue when you're an employee. want models to have medical checkups. And I know that sounds a little radical, but actually in France last year, they passed a law and that it requires models to have medical checkups because of the problems facing fashion models and also the images that our young adolescents consume. And incidentally, other countries have minimum BMIs for fashion models, Israel and Spain. Another part of this piece of legislation would be to have licensing for these modeling agencies, because some people will hold themselves out as modeling agencies, but they really have ulterior motives. We also requested that there be a health advisory posted in modeling agencies that gives them a number to call if they have problems with eating disorders or if they feel like they're being sexually harassed, because this is another problem where they've reported models to their agencies. I went to this photo shoot, this guy was harassing me, and nothing gets done. And that's a problem as well. So we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that merely introducing this bill will bring about change, but it's really felt